Excellencies, dear colleagues, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening to who is with us on WebEx and to who is now watching this video. We have the pleasure to welcome you today for a high-level session concluding the second series of the Geneva Bit Plastic Pollution Dialogues, which have kept the international community in Geneva and beyond engaged on this topic in the past months, making links with the United Nations Environment Assembly and other international processes. The Geneva Bit Plastic Pollution Dialogues are organized by the Geneva Environment Network in collaboration with the Basel, Rotterdam, and Stockholm Convention Secretariat, the Center for International Environmental Law, the Global Governance Center at the Graduate Institute, IUCN, the Forum on Trade, Environment, and SDGs, and the governments of Norway and Switzerland. You were over 1,000 to attend one or more of these dialogues. Let me just come back on the last months of our journey. We started the second series with the preparations of the Ministerial Conference on Marine Litter and Plastic Pollution, co-convened by Germany, Ecuador, Ghana, and Vietnam in Geneva in September last year. We then were at the Human Rights Council with the Special Rapporteur on Human Rights and Toxics, discussing his report on plastics to the United Nations General Assembly, where he reiterated that to deal with the global plastic crisis, action is needed at all levels, and that addressing human rights impacts is necessary in each of the stages of the plastic life cycle. On International Mountain Day, we remember that plastic pollution is not only a marine problem. Plastics are found in the most remote places of our planet. At our last session, we invited experts to provide recommendations on setting up a robust financial cooperation and technical assistance mechanisms within a new United Nations agreement on plastic pollution. And here we are today, after 8 plus other 7 sessions discussing plastic pollution impacts and governance for a high-level session that was initially scheduled when Peru and Rwanda submitted their resolution to the United Nations Environment Assembly to put in place a legally binding instrument to address this major crisis. Since there, Japan has also submitted a resolution last December, and Friday last week, the government of India has also shared an additional resolution on the topic of plastic pollution. Before we go into depth with today's high-level discussion, let me remind you that the documents presented, the summary, as well as the video of this event, will be made available on the webpage of the event. The link is being shared in the chat by my colleagues. Throughout the event, you can raise your questions by using the Q&A box. We will use those questions to feed the discussion after the panel presentations. The chair of today's dialogue is the Switzerland's ambassador for the environment. Before I hand over to him, let me warmly thank the teams in the permanent missions of Norway, of Peru, and of Japan to the United Nations in Geneva for their support in the organization of this event, and also the team of Ambassador Franz Perez in Bern, who also have been very supportive. With that, Excellency Franz, over to you.
Thank you very much, Diana, and thank you, dear colleagues, for attending this dialogue. And let me also extend the thanks. You're expressing the thanks to the teams of the missions of Peru, of Japan, and of Norway. Let me also extend the thanks to you, Diana, and your teams, because at the end you made this event possible. Dear colleagues, there's a broad consensus today on the fact that plastic pollution is a global issue, the issue of global concern. UNEA has undertaken a deep assessment of the plastic challenge, and the conclusion is pretty clear. While at the beginning we were focusing perhaps on the impacts that plastics has on the marine pollution, it became clear that all the environment compounds, also the soil, for example, are suffering under plastic pollution. Many initiatives have been launched to address that challenge, but it became clearer and clearer over time that we need a legally binding approach to address that problem and to find a solution for the best of all of us. And we all hope that UNEA-5.2 in a few weeks will launch indeed negotiations, a process towards such a legally binding instrument. But as always, I think we also have not only expectations with regard to the process as such, but also with regard to the content. And we are convinced that such a legally binding instrument would have to fulfill cell criteria. And therefore, the process to bring us there has to be set up in a manner that we are able to deliver on that. Namely, we have to strive for an ambitious agreement, an agreement that includes also binding obligations, commitments, targets, and indicators, but that also allows and stimulates further voluntary action. Therefore, it has to be both robust and flexible. And we think, from a Swiss perspective, that such an instrument would have to address the full life cycle of plastics, and very important, that it should build on and make full use of the existing expertise that we have already, of the institution mechanisms, and especially the MEAs that are dealing and providing also the expertise to deal with certain aspects of plastic pollutions. So it should be complementary and building on and working together with existing instruments and not create a duplication. And finally, of course, we also think that compliance and monitoring of success will be a critical part of such an instrument, such as also the provision of the support for those who need that support. But as indicated, at the next UNEA, we will decide over the next steps. And I'm very glad now to introduce and to hand over to the different speakers from the different missions. First, representative of the UNEA presidency, then the representative from Japan and from Peru, and then finally also private actor to present their views on what should be the next steps, and most importantly, what should be the solutions we're striving for in order to address in a positive manner the challenges posed by plastic. And let me now hand over directly to the representative of the presidency of UNEA-5 to Norway. I would like to give the floor or the microphone or the screen to His Excellency Ambassador Tina Morg-Smith. She is the Perm Rep of Norway in Geneva. Before that, she was serving also in New York and in Norway, dealing also with issues such as humanitarian affairs, an element that becomes also relevant, of course, for plastic. So I hand over to you, Ambassador, and we're interested to hear the perspective of the presidency. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Franz, and good afternoon to you colleagues and friends present here today. And a special thanks to Jen and partners for organizing this high-level event to close the second series of Geneva Beat Plastic Pollutions Dialogues. So as Diana said, Norway holds the presidency, and also mentioned by Franz, the presidency of the 5th Environmental Assembly, which will be held in Nairobi at the end of February, early March this year. It is our ambition that UNEA-5 will take a decision to launch negotiations towards a global agreement on plastic pollution to guide our common actions, targeting the whole life cycle of plastic products. We are very excited that we have come this far, and I'm encouraged to see all the support for such a decisive step towards stronger global commitment. Preventing and reducing plastic pollution has been on the top of Norway's environmental agenda for a while. So since 2014, Norway has pushed for a stronger global commitment to address marine plastic litter and plastic pollution. I believe that a legally binding global agreement will be the most effective solution. In less than 1 month, the global community will meet in Nairobi to negotiate a resolution that we hope will be a strong basis for a legally binding global agreement. We are not there yet, but the fact that we have come as far as we have in a relatively short time is due to our and your and everybody involved, the engagement that we have all had. This dialogue series, Geneva Beat Plastic Pollution Dialogue, has not only increased awareness on the impacts of plastic pollution on a wide range of issues for us all, it has also allowed us to discuss the possible solutions. We have listened to and learned from a wide range of organizations and actors, including civil society and business. And we will hear more from speakers here today. We will also learn more about the draft resolutions which have been presented for the consideration of UNEA-5.2 that share the ambition of establishing an intergovernmental negotiating committee for a new agreement. As I said in a statement in one of the first sessions in this dialogue series, and remember, this was at the time where we thought that the vaccines would be the solution to absolutely everything, but there is no vaccine against plastic pollution. The challenges and the solutions are different in all corners of the world, but we believe that the commitments in a new agreement should be the same for all. As we prepare for the negotiations of a new global agreement on plastic pollution, I wish to use this opportunity to thank Geneva Environment Network, and especially Diana, Switzerland, and all the other partners for all your hard work to put plastic pollution at the top of the global agenda. But most of all, I wish to thank all the participants who have contributed to the discussions with questions and ideas. Your involvement and input are key to make sure that the next steps build on experiences and lessons learned across sectors and geography. Let us now build on what we have learned and make sure that the resolution adopted at UNEA will lead to a comprehensive, legally binding agreement, which will bring about change and real impact in addressing global plastic pollution. Thank you so much. And back to you, Frans.
Thanks a lot, Tine, for this really motivating word. And you're absolutely right. I remember very well when Norway was launching the discussion on marine plastic pollution within UNEP. It's always a long process. And like in the Minamata Convention, Norway again is playing a critical role and helping us to address one of the global challenges. I think you're also absolutely right when highlighting that the Geneva beat plastic pollution dialogues have brought forward many ideas, elements, visions, and better understanding of the challenge, and will be also important input in this hopefully negotiation that will hopefully begin soon. And of course, I fully also agree, we all agree that vaccine will not help against plastic pollution. We need more. Let's hope, as you said it, that this legal binding instrument will bring a change, that it will be commitment for all of us, that it will be an involvement of all of us, and that it will be having real impact, as you said, on the ground. Thank you very much, Tina, for your words. And with that, I would like to hand over to His Excellency Ambassador Juan Luis Chicola Chil from Peru. Peru has also played a leading role in the preparation of UNEA with regard to that issue of plastic pollution. And you are also ambassador, permanent rep here in Geneva, or in Geneva, in Switzerland. And I'm very glad to hand over now the screen to you.
Hello, do you hear me?
Very well, yes.
Okay, thank you very much, and thank you for the welcome, Ambassador. Good afternoon to everyone. First of all, I would like to thank and congratulate UNEP and the Geneva Environment Network for organizing this high-level dialogue on the topic of the launch of the negotiations for a new global agreement on plastics pollution. I will also like to greet the Ambassador of Switzerland and Norway, as well as the other panelists joining us today. I'd like to reaffirm, through my participation in this event, the commitment of the Republic of Peru to promote awareness on plastic pollution as a global environmental concern. As you all know, plastic pollution is a widespread problem affecting different ecosystems, like the marine environment. It threatens wildlife, human health, food safety, and economic development. In the oceans, plastic pollution harms not only marine ecosystems and quality ocean health, but also fisheries, the health of marine species, coastal tourism, and contributes to climate change. Furthermore, it also has a direct impact on a broad range of human rights, including the rights to life, health, science, housing, and a healthy environment. I would like to recall the recently adopted resolution by the United Nations Human Rights Council last October, co-sponsored by Peru, that recognized for the first time that having a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment is a human right. Furthermore, the fragility of ecosystems such as the marine one has been once again highlighted recently in Peru, where more than 12,000 barrels of oil were spilled off the coast of Peru, seriously affecting the area's biodiversity, as well as thousands of fishermen who depend directly from the ocean for their subsistence. Because of the great impact that plastic pollution can cause, Peru has taken several measures to address this problem, including a roadmap for the integral management of plastic to prevent the degradation of marine ecosystems. But we face a transboundary problem. Therefore, we cannot address this global problem alone. Actions at the national level have to be strengthened with a coordinated global solution involving governments, civil society, academia, the private sector, and the consumers. Cooperation and coordination on a global scale are essential to address the transboundary problem of plastic pollution. We welcome the discussion that started in different settings around the world, which are all pointing towards one direction, the need to have a global instrument on plastic solution. For example, at the World Trade Organization, there is an ongoing informal dialogue on plastic pollution and environmentally sustainable plastics trade to complement discussions in the WTO Committee on Trade and Environment and other forums. Currently, there are 68 members participating in the initiative, including Peru. Recently, those members agreed on a ministerial declaration to identify actions that members can collectively take to support global efforts to reduce plastic pollution, as well to participate and support measures in other international processes, like the one to achieve a global agreement on plastic pollution. One of the last milestones toward this goal was the Ministerial Conference on Marine Litter and Plastic Pollution convened here in Geneva last September by Germany, Ecuador, Ghana, and Vietnam. This ministerial conference offered a platform to build momentum and political will to advance a coherent global strategy to end marine litter and plastic pollution. The minister declaration that was adopted in that conference and which has the endorsement of Peru reaffirms the commitment to achieve a global agreement with ambitious goals, wide participation, and means of implementation. It's exactly during the Ministerial Conference in Geneva last December that Peru and Rwanda, supported by a group of countries, circulated the first draft of a resolution that aims to end plastic pollution by starting the negotiation of a global instrument to address this serious problem. We believe that the moment has come to concrete actions, in particular at the upcoming UNEA 5.2. We circulated the draft back in September, almost 6 months before the UNEA, in order to build support around this initiative and promote an open, transparent, and inclusive process based on good faith. This initiative builds upon previous resolution of the UNEA and is put forward under the firm conviction that greater international measures are needed to prevent and reduce plastic pollution in the environment, including microplastics. The main purpose of the resolution is to convene an intergovernmental negotiation committee, INC, and establish an open mandate for negotiations to develop a new legally binding global instrument. This new legally binding instrument should be based on a comprehensive approach to prevent and reduce plastic pollution in the environment by promoting a circular economy and addressing the full life cycle of plastics from production, consumption, and design to waste prevention, management, and treatment. We consider it important to have key elements considered in this future instrument, such as shared objectives, national action plans, and commitments tailored to local and national circumstances and the characteristics of specific sectors, scientific and technical support, as well as financial and technical assistance. This reporting and monitoring work should have a role since it is crucial to develop evidence-based plans. This instrument should also promote financial and technical assistance for all this. Multi-stakeholder engagement is crucial. The scientific community, business and industry, investors, insurances, and development banks, donors, and civil society should work together with governments to promote scientific research and to develop innovative solutions to mitigate the impacts of marine litter and plastic pollution. In a sense, we believe that there is a strong need for an effective global instrument and that it should include both legally binding and voluntary elements. Dear colleagues, I am pleased to inform you that as of today, 53 member states from different regions across the world are co-sponsoring this resolution in order to move forward in addressing plastic pollution. Countries from Latin America to Asia, from Europe to Africa. We are all aware that plastic pollution is not just a marine litter problem and cannot be solved by focusing only on downstream solutions, such as recycling, and cannot answer only to private interests. Plastic solution is a more comprehensive issue that affects biodiversity and human health, and disproportionately impacts developing countries and socioeconomically challenged communities. That's why we need a strong treaty that tackles the full plastic life cycle. I am confident that this dialogue will provide a great opportunity to raise awareness on the negotiations that are happening right now for the upcoming UNEA on this topic. I believe that the successful outcome on this draft resolution at UNEA 5.2 will be one of the most important results for this assembly since its creation. Finally, I would like to end my intervention by quoting Pope Francis, who in his speech to the members of the diplomatic corps accredited to the Holy See a couple of weeks ago, made reference to the urgency of facing the care of our planet, or as he calls it, our common home, which is suffering from continuous and indiscriminate exploitation of resources, and urges from that the international community as a whole find common solutions and put them into practice. I believe that the initiative to start the negotiations on a new global agreement on plastic pollution goes in that direction. I would like to thank the organizers again for promoting this event and for inviting Peru, which I am sure will contribute to pave the way towards a new agreement that will tackle such an important issue as plastic pollution. A strong and meaningful outcome at the upcoming UNEA will have in the future not only a powerful impact on the people of the world, but for our planet in general. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ambassador, for this again also excellent presentation. You were drawing first our attention to the impacts that plastic are having on ecosystems, and then you were highlighting the need for cooperation at global scale. And it was also good to refer to other initiatives and other processes and sectors that are addressing the issues, such as, for example, the WTO with these initiatives. And from that perspective, as you were referring to, it was symbolic that the environment ministers met at the WTO in Geneva to agree on the next steps forward to address plastic pollutions. You are then presenting the draft resolution that you and Rwanda, supported by 53 countries, have submitted to UNEA, which will be for discussion in a couple of weeks, and underlining that it is important to have an ambitious, robust, legally binding instrument with financial technical assistance that is addressing really the life cycle of plastics from products to waste, in order to be able really to care for our common home, as you were quoting Pope Francis. Thank you very much for this presentation. And with this, I would like to hand over to His Excellency, the Ambassador Koza Honzel from Japan. He's Deputy Permanent Representative in Geneva, so also a Geneva-based diplomat. And Japan has submitted another draft proposal for a resolution at UNEA. And we are now interested to listen to you, Ambassador. Over to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador Franz. And good afternoon, Excellencies, and my colleagues coming from Norway, Switzerland, and Peru. And I'm very glad to participate this kind of meeting, because we are one of the founder of this kind of issues. As we celebrated G20 Osaka Summit in 2019, Japan proposed the Osaka Blue Ocean Vision, which aims to reduce additional pollution of marine plastic waste to zero by 2015. Since then, this vision has gained the participation of more and more emitting and consuming countries. Japan shared this vision for both the G20 countries and developing countries. As the creator of the Osaka Blue Ocean Vision, Japan has been actively coordinating efforts under the United Nations framework for implementing measures against marine plastic waste. Japan is proud to have led international discussion on this issue, including on the support for building waste management capacity in developing countries. Japan is also proud to be currently actively leading efforts to reduce pollution caused by marine plastics. On the outset of the paragraph-by-paragraph consultation on Japan's draft resolution on marine plastic pollution, I'd like to take this opportunity to present our intention. Whether or not we can agree on establishing an intergovernmental negotiation committee on marine plastic pollution at UNEA-5.2 would be crucial in the determination of the success of the UNEA 5.2. Resolution on marine litter, including plastic, have been adopted at every UNEA so far, and we should be building on these discussions. The time is right to consider an international legally binding instrument under the INC. Japan firmly believes in building a globally effective international instrument by enabling the participation of major plastic consuming and emitting countries. Based on this thinking, our draft resolution proposes a mechanism where each country would develop and report national action plans that takes into account the respective national circumstances. And these plans will feed into the review of the global progress on reducing marine plastic pollution. The premise of this idea is this: each country has its own effective way to tackle marine plastic pollution, looking at the whole life cycle of plastics, from upstream to downstream. We also believe that the discussion of the INC should be open, and the resolution to be adopted at UNEA 5.2 should not limit the scope of the INC or overly prejudge its outcomes. Based on this thinking, our draft resolution envisages the INC to take up various elements for consideration as appropriate. I'm pleased to share with you that our draft resolution is now co-sponsored by Sri Lanka, Cambodia, and Palau. We welcome other countries to support our intention and join us by co-sponsoring this draft resolution. In order to make the international instrument more effective, the active participation from the widest possible number of countries, including large consuming and emitting countries of plastics, should be ensured. Therefore, your input, comments, and questions to our resolution are more than welcome. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ambassador, indeed, for also making very clear at the beginning of your presentation that the adoption of a resolution on plastic will be a success criteria for this UNEA. So if this UNEA is to be successful, then we clearly need to adopt a resolution again on plastics. You're highlighting also that so far each UNEA was able to adopt resolutions on plastic, and you were also indicating that the time is now ripe for a legally binding instrument, and that this resolution at the upcoming UNEA should bring us forward towards that direction. Then you were highlighting the specific element of the Japanese proposal, which is also supported now by other countries, namely that countries should have an obligation to submit concrete national plans, how they want to tackle the plastic, in line with the very specific circumstances of each of the countries. And then you were also indicating that you think it is important that the INC process should be open and that the UNEA resolution should not limit the scope of a future legally binding instrument, and that it should not prejudge the outcome of the negotiations. Thank you very much for this overview of the Japanese proposal. Just recently, I think these days, we have also received a draft from India. I think this draft came in before before Jen was able to organize that event. So it would have been really very interesting also to have an Indian perspective outlining their draft and the core elements of their draft. They also want to address, of course, plastics. They're not specific about in their proposal whether this should be a legally binding approach, but what they are specific about, that they would like to request UNEP to organize a series of forums dealing with legal and policy issues, with technology issues, with financial issues, and with monitoring and reporting. So another slightly different approach as compared to the two resolutions that we have just heard. But now with this, I would like to hand over now to the private sector, to the civil society, to those at the end who are acting, who are dealing in the real world, and not as us negotiators in meeting rooms, but who are acting in the real world, meaning the WWF and Nestle as an important private actor is also engaged in that issue. And first, I would like to give you, Marco Lambertini, Director General of the WWF, the floor, so that you can also provide a very specific perspective on that issue and perhaps even give some first reactions to the different approaches that are proposed now for UNEA from a perspective of the WWF. Marco Lambertini, over to you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Perez, and the excellencies and distinguished guests and all the colleagues on this call. First of all, let me just say I'm honored and super grateful for the invitation to this panel and to represent not only WWF, but in a larger sense, also a voice from the global movement of citizens and civil society groups and organizations worldwide that demands a solution to the current plastic pollution crisis. Yes, because the current scientific knowledge already makes very clear one thing, that the global plastic pollution, it is a crisis level. And it is affecting, as we heard before from our previous speakers, not just our natural world, but also people's well-being, society as a whole, and in our economy as well, in fact. And we are running out of time to tackle this crisis. The crisis is accelerating and is reaching a point potentially of no return impacts. The more time we waste, the more plastic waste enter in the environment, and the harder this battle will be. One other thing is clear in recent times, and that is to address the current plastic pollution crisis, we must take ambitious, coordinated, and determined actions, and we must be united in doing so. And united is a key word, and it's exactly the key word around the need for a global common treaty in beating plastic pollution. Plastic pollution affects the entire planet. We heard before, land, ocean, freshwater systems, people, livelihoods at risk increasingly from uncontrolled burning, dump sites, microplastic. We all are familiar with that. So there is a strong, compelling case for the need for such a coordinated action through a global binding treaty. We're also gaining actually more understanding of the complex linkages between plastics and climate change. I'm sure many of you are familiar with the report Beyond Plastic Group that warns that the plastic are the new coal. And actually in some countries, like for example, the US, plastics industry contribution to climate change is on track to exceed that of coal-fired power by 2030. So this is astonishing. But again, this is all not any longer green alarmism. This is actually now science speaking. These facts are extremely compelling and very worrying, but also, most importantly, they should jolt us into action. The growing attention to inaction on plastic pollution in the last few years, from local grassroots initiatives to international programs, cooperation frameworks, regulations from single states and municipalities, voluntary actions from companies, all this is signaling a really positive turning point in humanity's relationship with plastic, and also the determination to really address the issue. But we know that all this, all we've seen until now, though great and admirable, is not enough. And so the crisis, in fact, the plastic crisis, shows no sign of slowing down. There is no room for complacency. And given the scale at which the crisis is operating and the pace at which it's progressing, a systemic whole of society change on how we currently produce, consume, dispose, and recycle plastic, it's necessary. And I have to say, you asked me my reaction to what I heard. What I heard is incredibly encouraging, because from Norway, from Peru, from Japan, I heard a lot of aligned language, a lot of convergence on the need for clear science-based ambition, on the need for a global united effort, on a need for an effort that tackles the whole life cycle of practice, from production to consumption and disposal. So all this is extremely encouraging. Of course, we need to bring the rest of the world aligned and converging on these key principles around the global binding treaty for plastic pollution. But I have to say, we in WWF and many other organizations as civil society, very excited how the discussion is maturing. The global momentum for the new agreement has been growing rapidly. We ourselves alone are collecting millions of signatures, and many other organizations have done the same. Consumers are ready, are demanding, and are ready also to change their own lifestyles. And this is also incredibly encouraging. In December 2021, together with the Center of International Environmental Law and Environmental Investigation Agency, WWF joined more than 700 groups and organizations in 113 countries, civil society, indigenous groups, workers and trade unions, youth and women's organizations. The interest, the sensitivity, the willingness to act and change across society is staggering. So now the ball is once again in the hand of the leaders to really harness this readiness for change through a clear global treaty that allows us, all of us, government, businesses, civil society, consumers, all of us to rally around a common goal and a common plan. And the new global treaty must include specific requirements and standards on products, materials, and practices along with global goals. We think this is really important. It's important that we define a global goal of this treaty, like for any other treaty. You know, on climate, the global goal is very clear: net zero emissions by 2030. The global treaty on plastic should have a binding global goal as well that sets a clear compass for everybody to move in the same direction. And also, it's important that it does include clearly goals and targets, measurable goals and targets that can be applied across the world, across the supply chains, across the society, different sectors, including targets on reduction, which is a fundamental dimension of beating plastic pollution, collection and waste management, recycling, and also promotion and incentives of non-oil-based biodegradable, suitable alternatives materials. All this needs to be part of a common integrated plan that spares no tools to deal with such a complex and big issue. And it's therefore it's time for governments to really agree to a mandate coming out of UNEA-5.2 to negotiate and adopt such an ambitious new agreement with specific legally binding provisions and obligations to prevent and remediate plastic pollution and its impact. Let me also say that a shared global plan with harmonized rules and regulations it's the only way we can really provide an efficient response to this problem, and to enable and support local governments, businesses, and to drive consumers and succeed in stopping plastic pollution. And very important for us is also that in approving a mandate for a legally binding global treaty on plastic pollution, it's critical that that mandate stimulates to consider all relevant measures, including global standards and bans, to effectively and efficiently stop plastic pollution. And that spares no options and maintain an open mandate to really explore all possible options to be able to develop an effective treaty that unites the world and society in this fight against plastic pollution. So in a nutshell, excellencies and colleagues, very excited about the momentum, very worried about the acceleration of the plastic pollution crisis, but also very aware that this is a particularly turning point for us, for leaders, for society to really rally and pull together around a strong, ambitious, measurable, and concrete plan to deal with plastic pollution in the future. So thank you very much for the opportunity, and WWF and many other organizations in society continue to be very, very excited in supporting this journey. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Mr. Lambertini. Thanks a lot for beginning by highlighting again that the plastic pollution is indeed a global crisis, and that I also draw attention to the complex interlinkages, for example, between plastics and climate change. And then also make it clear that this is not about alarmism, but this is science-based. We have the scientific information for that. And then you were also highlighting some commonalities between the different approach of Japan and Peru and Rwanda and other countries and India, namely that both seem to be in line with the life cycle approach. You were indicating that the society is ready for a legally binding instrument and also highlighting some of the elements that should go into such a legally binding instrument, namely a global goal. Then secondly, goals and measurable targets, for example, with regard to reduction of plastic use, with regard to recycling or collections. Then you also said that standards for products could be part or should be part of such a legally binding instruments, and also bans. And you were highlighting that the legally binding instrument is the only really effective instrument and way to enable and support countries and local governments to act on plastic. And finally, you concluded with a similar comment, like just our colleague, the ambassador from Japan, was highlighting that the INC should have an open mandate that allows it to look at all possible solutions so that we really can test all possible solutions to find then the right instrument with all the tools that are needed. Thank you very much for that. And with that, I would now like to hand over to Jody Roussel, who is Senior Public Affairs Manager in Nestle, and they're working directly with the issue of packaging and sustainability in Nestle, and through that, of course, also with the issue of plastic. And I welcome now you and hand over to you, Jody, to present your perspective on this issue.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Perez. And thank you to UNEP and our host for inviting me to join you here today in the discussion. Does the sound okay?
Yes,
Ambassador Perez?
It's
okay.
Yes.
Okay, great. I'm very much honored to join you and to share a business perspective, not only from Nestle's perspective, but also from the 70 global businesses that joined us in signing the recent pre-UNEA business statement, which I'll share a bit with you about now. So on January 17th, we released this statement where we and other businesses, over 70 globally, called for an ambitious UN treaty based on a circular economy approach to addressing plastic pollution at a global scale. The businesses that joined Nestle, the WWF and EMF who had convened this statement were brand owners, retailers, packaging converters, packaging producers, waste management companies, and over 30 financial institutions representing more than 5 trillion in assets under management. As far as we know today, 161 countries back a treaty. That would be more than 2/3 of the UN member states. And we believe the time has come to start intergovernmental negotiations. A new UN treaty we see as really crucial to setting a high common standard of action for all the countries to abide by and driving a transition to the circular economy for plastics globally and at scale. This requires governments to align on regulatory measures that cover the whole life cycle of plastics, not limiting the scope of negotiations only to addressing downstream waste management challenges. The signatories to this business call, we all recognize that the issue of plastic pollution is fundamentally transboundary in nature. It leads to significant negative impacts on our environment, our society, and economy, and a holistic, coordinated international response that tackles problems at the source is urgently needed to effectively stop plastic leakage into nature. A circular economy for plastics will contribute to the efforts to tackle climate change and biodiversity loss, as well as, we believe, bring positive social and economic impacts. I'll address those later. So we urge together the UN member states to establish an intergovernmental negotiating committee at the UNEA and to develop an ambitious international and legally binding instrument on plastic pollution. We hope it will include both upstream and downstream policies so that we can keep plastics in the economy and out of the environment. We can reduce virgin plastic production and use, and we can decouple plastic production from the consumption of fossil resources. We hope that the treaty will set a clear direction to align governments, business, and civil society behind this common understanding that the causes of plastic pollution are and our shared approach to address them. And for companies and investors, this is about creating a level playing field and preventing a patchwork of disconnected solutions, while setting the right enabling conditions to make a circular economy work not only in practice, but also at scale. We hope it will provide robust governance structures to ensure all countries' participation and compliance, setting common definitions as well as harmonized standards that will be applicable to all. We believe this will facilitate investments to scale innovation, infrastructure, and skills development in the countries and industries most in need of international support. We're today at a critical point in time to establish an ambitious UN treaty that will support systemic solutions and speed up the transition to the circular economy. We see the UNEA 5.2 as a decisive and auspicious moment to turn the tide on the global plastic pollution crisis. When we think about why did we sign this statement as Nestlé, we sign it because everyone cares. Our consumers care and we move with our consumers. Our employees, nearly 300,000 around the world, and their families care about this issue. Our customers care, and retailers want to work with us to meet their sustainability objectives. And our investors care, and we're very much encouraged to see that more and more regulators care about a just transition. Now, if we look to a future where a treaty is not negotiated, what does that look like to business? Without a treaty, we expect business as usual to continue. This will be a patchwork of new local and national plastics legislation that vary widely, not only from country to country, but sometimes from province to province or state to state, yet all seeking to address the same systemic challenges. Today, we estimate an estimated 400 to 600 new laws are developed every year across global markets. The lack of standards drive lack of investment in collection, sorting, reuse, or recycling systems. And this leads to negative impacts on the climate and also soil health. Business as usual doesn't establish a fair sharing of accountabilities across the value chain or the economies of scale that are necessary to address the shared challenge together. And our vision at Nestlé is that none of our packaging should end up in landfills or as litter. And there are a number of goals and treaties that I wanted to share that complement this discussion on the UNEA 5.2. So one is around the area of biodiversity, social impacts, and economic impacts. And then I'll look at some of the international agreements already in place briefly. In terms of biodiversity, we at Nestlé are addressing risks and impacts related to biodiversity that stem not only from unmanaged waste, but also climate change, water systems, agricultural practices, in order to support biodiversity with the right practices. This is about regenerating natural capital, and natural resources and protecting soils. From the social perspective, we look very much at the challenge faced by the informal waste collection sector, which today plays a pivotal role in recycling and the value chain in many countries. It's key that these actors, estimated to be between 15 to 25 million individuals, are included as stakeholders, and that the treaty can protect and enhance their livelihood and human rights, along with all people involved in the informal side of the waste sector, in alignment with the UN guiding principles on business and human rights. If we look at the opportunity from a job creation perspective, building on jobs that already exist, we see that the circular economy offers opportunities in systems both in upstream material innovation and production and downstream in collection, sorting, reuse, and recycling. And there have been dozens of reports about this over the past decade. Two of them I'd like to highlight were summarized in a recent World Bank publication, a study by the ILO showing 6 million new jobs could be created by a shift to a circular economy, and one by the Circular Economy Research Center indicating upward of 20 million new jobs. So we have many pieces of the solution here today, and we see the treaty as giving us a necessary framework to move forward faster together. A treaty could set a clear direction to align governments, business, and civil society behind a common understanding of the causes of plastic pollution and a shared approach to address them. Governments have supported the Paris Agreement on climate. At Nestlé, we've set out a commitment to achieve net zero by 2050 and to reduce our use of virgin plastic by 1/3 by 2025. The Sustainable Development Goals, which many of the governments participating in treaty discussions have supported, number 15, life on land, number 14, life on water, conserving and protecting our resources. Nestlé's echo those with our commitment to a regenerative agricultural system, which is a long-term journey to support the transformation of food production. Sustainable Development Goal 12, ensuring sustainable production and consumption patterns, is echoed by Nestlé in our 5-pillar approach to packaging, where we look at designing for recycling, reuse and refill, innovating packaging materials, supporting infrastructure systems, and changing mindsets inside the company and with our partners. Governments in the past have effectively crafted an international response to environmental risks before, with the negotiation and enactment of the Montreal Protocol. It didn't result in damage to industry, but rather industry, stakeholder, and governments were brought together and acted to protect the ozone layer. We hope you'll aim for the same level of ambition today. We need to regulate plastic to achieve the protection of our lands and oceans from unregulated littering and to protect our climate and soils for the future of food production. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Joelle, for outlining the perspective, not only from Nestle, but from a broad group of industry ranging from brand owners, retailers, packaging and waste industry, highlighting the importance of circular economy also from a business perspective. You're indicating that the time is ripe also for negotiating and to set global standards for plastic in a circular economy in order to ensure that there is a level playing field. You were highlighting that the problem is global and transboundary in nature, and that therefore also an international approach is needed that addresses environmental, social, and economic aspects. You said very nicely, we should keep plastic in the economy and out of the environment. I think that's a nice slogan. And then you were really indicating that without such a global treaty, we risk to have a patchwork approach where not only state to state the legislation might differ, but even province to province, and in Switzerland perhaps even commune to commune. So a lack of standard, of international standard, would mean a lack of investment. It will also mean that we miss the possibility of economies of scales. You were then looking specifically at the biodiversity aspects and social impacts, but also on economics impacts, and indicating that circular economy really offers tremendous job opportunities upstreams and downstreams from a circular economy. And finally, you are highlighting that such a legally binding instrument would be fully in line with other global instruments such as the SDGs. Thank you very much for this rich presentation. You have heard now first a perspective of Norway. He was initiating the process. Then from Peru and Japan perspective, from countries submitting a specific proposal for a resolution to be adopted at UNEA. And finally also the perspective from WWF and from Nestle, so from the environmental perspective and the industry perspective, and everybody was agreeing that time is ripe, that we should move towards a global instrument that allows us to act together on an issue that we all together are also concerned with. This concludes our statements, and that brings us now to the open part of this dialogue, to the real dialogue. And with this, I would like to open the floor for questions.
Here we pick up, we have a few questions. We have one from Emma Farge of Reuters. Do you think the inclusion of curbs on new plastic production, for example, from oil industry, will form part of the treaty negotiations, and are they likely to attract broad support? Do you want me to bring 2 or 3 questions, Franz?
Yes, I suggest you provide exactly, and then we can comment via mail if that's possible.
Very good. Then we have a question from Abbas Torabi of Iran. What is your prediction for possibility of ratification of the resolution on plastic pollution? Will it be challenging in case of ratification of the resolution when the Intergovernmental Negotiation Committee negotiations will start? And maybe a third one from Pascal Delisle of the EU mission in Geneva. There is obviously a lot of convergence between the Peru, Rwanda, and the Japanese resolutions in how they conceive global action. The scope of the Japanese resolution is, however, more limited in his perspective. What is the view of panelists on the possibility of merging the two at the upcoming United Nations Environmental Assembly?
Thanks, Diana. I would just complement the last question and suggesting not only combining the 2, but the 3, including the Indian proposal. But having said that, who would like to answer first from the panelists?
Ambassador Perez, can I just step in on the first question, which is, I think, something very dear to our heart, because I think, we're going to, during the negotiation, as somebody said, actually almost everybody said, it's not just about the process. The process is super important, but to deliver the right outcome. And the right outcome includes a number of options. And some of these options are quite controversial and hard to take. And the one that was mentioned in the question, the curb of plastic production from the petrochemical sector, it's a tough one as well. But in our view, in my view, there is no way we can actually address the issue of plastic pollution unless we tackle the issue of the amount of plastic we produce, and also the quality of the plastic that we produce based on oil. Right now, too much of the plastic produced is simply not usable for any other purpose, is not recyclable, and there is an excess in production and utilization of plastic. So there is definitely a purpose to overall tackle the issue of reducing the unnecessary plastic that we are producing and consuming today.
Thank you very much. And I would like to perhaps just to invite Ambassador Onzei to also intervene, because as I know you have to leave soon, we'll be filled up replaced by some colleagues from the mission, but over to you.
Thank you very much. As I have indicated in my statement before, that we'd like to inform the world that the discussion at INC should be open to all the stakeholders, and that there will be more flexibility in preparation. And we'd like to invite the participation of the framework of more countries, and including their stakeholders. And Japan does not want to foresee the debate for the time being, but at the same time, yes, we have to focus on many upstreams and downstreams. So we have to some kind of more flexible framework in order to accommodate and foresee some kind of ratification by many countries. And of course, regarding convention of resolution, this is not a negotiation table for the time being, but the basis for subsequent discussions should take into account all the relevant discussions we have been holding, including today. And we look to the UNEP Secretariat and co-facilitators on the clarification and the suggestions. So we will be able to elaborate our work for the preparation for the coming meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And before you are leaving, perhaps you have just one more minute. There was a question about the possibility to bring in the different elements of the three resolutions together. Do you, as a spontaneous reaction, think that could be a way forward, or sorry to put you on the spot?
Yeah, I'm not so yes. For the time being, we are flexible to discuss any kind of matters. So, but Indian proposal is a very new one, so we have to scrutinize the content of the Indian one. And of course, among the three groups, we need some kind of a consultation. Which part is very good, and which one is some kind of a controversial for the resolution or not, and we have to prepare well for the successful meeting. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. Just Ambassador from Peru, what is your view on that question? How the three different proposals complement each other and whether they could be merged?
Thank you very much. Allow me first of all to send my greetings to my friend, the Ambassador Koso Hansei of Japan. Buenas tardes. I must reveal he is a Spanish speaker, very fluent. He has served in Madrid. I know his history. Also to say my respects to the DG of the Worldwide Foundation, a very respected and prestigious historic institution, that deals with environmental issues and subjects. And also to send my respects to representative of Nestlé. As former ambassador of Peru to Switzerland, I know very well the work of Nestlé and their social responsibility. I have been visited several times your premises in Bebé. So, and I think you are now in Bebé because I recognize the building. Well, thank you very much again for the invitation to all the organizations. And Well, concerning our point, maybe it's important to raise up the main goals that the Rwanda and Peru resolution stands for. No? First of all, the idea is to establish an intergovernmental negotiation committee to negotiate a legally binding instrument. Second, it's not important only to establish the INC, but to establish a good mandate, an ambitious mandate, no? And then to address the full life cycle of plastics, from oil and gas extraction to waste disposal, because plastic is pollution far more than our marine environment. We cannot limit the scope to marine litter. And we would like also to have solutions in accordance with the waste hierarchy, starting with reduction and reuse. Focuses on fast solutions like bioplastics and recycling will not solve this problem. And we would like also to support frontline workers and communities being impacted by plastic pollution at every stage of this life cycle, ensuring a just transition and green future for these communities. Let me tell you concerning your question that we are open, of course, as a part of the multilateral system. Peru is committed to the multilateral systems all around the world to find and to talk and to have that dialogue with Japan, also with India that has just recently presented. But I must highlight it also that this Peru and Rwanda resolution is already supported by 53 member states of the UNEA. So we have do a very long work for several months already. And let me tell you, speaking very frankly, that our resolution is more ambitious. It's more, it has been raised by one of the questions that we received, that were really our resolution deals with all the chain of the production until it arrives to the sea as litter. So I think this ambitious way of addressing to the plastic pollution is the way we have to have as an important mandate coming out from the UNEA 5.2 meeting. So this is our, but saying so, we are very open. And I must tell you that we, although there are not official conversations still, because it hasn't agreed, but all the members of the UNEA that we will wait until the last weeks previous to the UNEA meeting in order to begin official dialogues. We are having some informal talks around this idea. Actually, this same week on Friday, we're having this informal meeting with some of the main countries that are having initiative at the UNEA. So we are working. I cannot reveal exactly all the agenda that we are going to talk on Friday, but there are some words, some talks, and let's hope we will have a good negotiation process in Nairobi at the end of the month in order to find really what we all hope in the international community, a good agreement on plastic pollution that gives us hope. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. And we have just received another question, and as long as Ambassador André is still here, let me just raise what you have to say when you have to rush away and when your colleagues are jumping in. But there was it's a question from Sonia Jurado to all the panelists. In fact, the question is, what was the rationale or the main concern for the Japanese government to decide to submit a new proposal apart from the Peru and Rwanda proposal?
Thanks very much.
Yes, over to you.
Yeah. I can make a statement. Maybe that's kind of a scope is a little bit different from our proposal, resolution proposal, and Peruvian and Rwanda's resolution. So we have to scrutinize what kind of scope and the content of the legal binding framework will be some kind of as we have discussed it, that needs some kind of a wide range of caption. So we to some extent, we are concerned about the Peruvian and Rwanda's resolution will be able to cover all the problems relating to the ocean plastic debris problem or not. That is our concern, frankly speaking. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And I just would like to combine two questions that have been coming in. The one is from Diagama Abulaye, who is just referring to the Abidjan Convention and is highlighting that there are local or regional instruments like the Abidjan Convention who could also add some value to the broader framework. And he's asking, or she's asking, what would be the way to ensure that this new convention would build on and would really be open and inclusive to all stakeholders and instruments that they can engage as well. And Yves Lador is in the same direction, asking the question, well, how can we ensure the complementarity between this new legally binding instrument and the Basel Convention? That might be a question that is going to all of you from a country perspective, but also from a business or a WWF perspective. How do you think, what has to be done to ensure inclusiveness and complementarity with existing systems? Yes? Jose, yes, Ambassador.
Thank you, Franz. And maybe we propose some kind of our proposal includes some kind of national report or some kind of will be handled to the Commission each year or some subsequent time. So I think that in order to write down the governmental report, there will be some kind of consultation system inside some kind of stakeholder among the stakeholders, including plastic-related industries and consumers. So that process will be guaranteed in order to secure the system or some kind of in order to effective stopping of plastic waste. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I'm just going to put you a little bit on the spot. For example, Jody, what would you say to that concern that some expressed that this new instrument has to build on the existing instruments, such as the Basel Convention or the Abuja Convention?
I think that it's clear to all of us who've been reflecting on what this treaty could do, that of course it would be building on existing intergovernmental agreements, such as those I'd referenced earlier in my comments, but also the Basel Convention, the Minamata Convention. We have to remember that not all member states of the UN have ratified the Basel Convention, nor the ban on trade, which remains largely unratified. And if we look to Nestlé's vision that none of our packaging ends up in litter or as in landfills, we require the sorting and collection of our packaging after it's been used by consumers so that it can be effectively either reused or recycled. So these are very important elements that the treaty needs to build on. We don't see them as separate and we don't see them as duplicative, because the standards and potentially the assistance center that could form after the treaty, providing intellectual capital development as well as financing programs, roadmaps, technical assistance. Those are all functions that we don't have provided today, as well as the national commitments that might form in national plastic action plans or nationally determined commitments, whatever they might be called in the future. And I'll say briefly on the stakeholder front, we at Nestlé also believe a multi-stakeholder view is absolutely critical to having good results, and not only good results during the negotiations so that member states can be supported by the views of their stakeholders nationally, but also afterwards to ensure that the national action plans are robust and well reflected in both their planning and in their implementation, because ultimately the implementation of such a treaty is what is going to give us the opportunity to address the challenge that plastic waste and littering represent today. We have been doing work with the OPLN, the Ocean Plastics Leadership Network, which had formed a activist to investor convening platform, first globally, and now with sponsorship, they are convening in Chile, Malaysia, South Africa, the United States, Ghana, Vietnam, and Indonesia, a series of national multi-stakeholder dialogues. This is something that Nestle's been delighted to participate in at the national level, and we hope very much that more countries will choose to have their own national multi-stakeholder dialogues to facilitate this robust process of expressing views, educating stakeholders, and overall bringing up the level of knowledge about how the treaty could potentially function to solve some of these systemic challenges.
Thank you very much, Jody. You also a little bit answering a question that came in from Andy Clee, who was asking, well, how can grassroots community organizations act to support the implementation of a successful agreement? And of course, supporting the implementation agreement belongs from grassroots community to economic actors and just the initiative you're referring to. But Marco Lambertini, how do you see can grassroots organizations, local organizations, but also big organizations contribute to the implementation of the future legally binding instrument?
First of all, thank you. I think it's a great question, because actually, if you look at the journey over the plastic pollution debate until today, actually the grassroots movements have played already a major role in growing the demand for action, in pushing and demanding governments and companies to take action. And so the grassroots movement has already played a major role and will continue to play a major role in the implementation. Also considering that it is about production, it is about the whole life cycle and the whole value chain, including consumption. And I think the consumption dimension needs to be highlighted as well. And grassroots movements can play a major role in rallying and engaging consumers in moving in the right direction and embracing change, because we need also change at the consumption level.
Thank you very much. There is another question coming in which says, well, would a circular economy for plastic still pose a significant threat to human health? Should we seek to minimize the amount of plastic that's exposed to, or is that a step too far for present? John, you were referring to the circular economy and saying quite nicely, let's keep plastic in the industry but out of the environment. How would you respond to that concern that the circular economy for plastic would still or could still be a significant threat to human health and environment?
I mean, plastic today plays critical roles in several industries. In the food industry, it prevents food waste and food spoilage and contamination. It also protects against humidity and temperature changes when food is in transport. Additionally, when we look at the challenge of the circular economy, it's a challenge of collection of plastic. And so we see the importance in keeping the plastic in the circular economy, whether it's in the food industry, whether it's in consumer goods, whether it's in medical applications. Plastic has critical roles to play, but that role is not to be in the environment. So we look forward to working with all of the parties along the value chain to ensuring that the circular economy for plastic can be built through smart decisions in material selection upstream to the right systems for collection, sorting, reuse, and recycling in the downstream.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Can I add one comment? Because I think I agree with Jody that the effort, in fact, when I refer to a global goal for the treaty, the global goal has to be no plastic in the environment. I mean, that's got to be really a clear binding, if you like, global goal for society as a whole. And I agree with that. The only thing I would like to add is that if it is true that plastic plays an important role in today's economy, in today's society in many ways, this is undeniable. It's also true that we can gradually move away from it and explore new alternatives as we progress. We have taken the journey from fossil fuels to renewable energy. A few years back, fossil fuels were considered necessary and inevitable. Today is a very different story because technology has kicked in, innovation has kicked in. And I think that could and should happen with plastic as well. Ideally, in the future is a world without plastic that poses that can become a pollutant in any form or any shape. But it's a journey, and we need to take the journey together.
Thank you. Thank you very much to both of you. There were a few questions also relating to the negotiation process, namely, when could the negotiations begin if the decision is taken at the UNEA? Would there be challenges of the ratification and for the entry into force of that instrument? Tina, perhaps you have ideas how we could respond to this question of the process. Sorry to put you on the spot, but perhaps you have ideas on that.
No, but thank you, and thank you to all here for such excellent presentations and also for interesting questions. And first of all, for me, this is an opportunity to listen in and to and also know that colleagues from Oslo who will be part of the negotiations in Nairobi are also listening in today. So that's a good start. And as of now, our main concern is, of course, getting to the point where we have the mandate and to have an open and inclusive process up to then, so that people are able to put in what they want into discussion. And there are a couple of points with regards to that. We think that all country delegates have to prepare for questions and answer sessions already now on Thursday. We know that there are discussions going on how to bring people together to look at the proposals that are now existing. But this is again, of course, up to others. And for us, the most important thing is that it's inclusive and transparent. When we get to the point where we hopefully are at the stage where we have a decision, the next step will be to set up a preparatory meeting at the pre-INC to plan for the process, to agree on the organizational work, including establishing rules of procedure, financing, the bureau, president, etc. And this is how all multilateral processes start. It's by establishing, the exact format for going forward, and that's not something that we will decide, but that's sort of the stage of events going forward. So first of all, the decision needs to be made, and then there will be a preparatory meeting following that. So let's just make sure that we focus on the goal and then prepare for the next step. And I must say that I've been very encouraged today to listen in also to the business part and what is said from Judy's side. It's really interesting to hear those views, and also because you are such a huge player out in the field, and that other organizations also are looking to you. So I find that very useful to hear your experiences and plans forward. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Tina, also to highlight a bit how we should foresee the next steps after UNEA. And unfortunately, are already coming slowly towards an end of this dialogue. I think it was for me really interesting and stimulating and also motivating to listen to each of you. And I would suggest now that we just make another round, beginning from behind, moving towards you, Tina, at the end, just so that to allow you just to make a few last comments, also to react to what you have heard and express also what you really wish as an outcome from this UNEA. And I would like to begin first with you, Judy Roussel, so that you can share with you our last comments.
Thank you, Ambassador Perez. I guess to keep it brief at the end, I would say we're hoping to see a treaty that reflects both upstream and downstream policies to keep plastics in the economy and out of the environment. We seek to reduce virgin plastic production and use and decouple plastic production from the consumption of fossil fuel resources. So we're very much hoping that with this UNEA 5.2, we're going to be able to see the beginning of a negotiation process that's going to create a new robust standard for cooperation, for new standards for plastics use, and ultimately create the pathways to build the systems for recycling and for reuse that we need to have a real circular economy for plastics. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Judy. And with that, I would like to hand over to you, Marco Lambertini.
Thank you, Ambassador Perez and everyone. Very stimulating discussion. I will use a few words just to characterize in a concise way what the treaty should look like and the negotiations end up producing. First of all, I will use the word global, and I think we heard that so much from all the speakers. Second one, binding, and that's also important to create that level playing field Jody from a business perspective was mentioning. I would then add science-based ambition, because I think at the end of the day, if the ambition is not the right ambition, the treaty will not deliver the result we want. And then I will add the word holistic, because we heard again from many of us, all of us, the need to really have a holistic approach, upstream, downstreams, looking at all elements of the plastic impacts. And then vis-a-vis and then I would add one other dimension that perhaps is about really looking at how we can incentivize financially change. Because I think at the end of the day, we need to find an economic compelling instrument to really, a narrative at the same time, to really drive change, that change at all levels, in regulation, in business behavior and responsibility, in consumers' behavior and lifestyles. And in terms of the mandate and the negotiations, open mandate as much as possible. I think the Intergovernmental Negotiating Committee needs to be free to consider all relevant actions and measures, and including regulatory measures as well. So, very exciting time, and as I said at the beginning, very happy to continue to engage and support in every way possible.
Thanks a lot, Marco. And now I would like to give over to the Embassy of Japan. Takako Tsuchisaka is online, and ask you whether you would like also to reflect a little bit on what has been said right now. Yes.
Yes, this is I'm Takashi Mizushina. I mean, instead of Ambassador Mr. Honsei, I would like to thank you for inviting this online event. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And with this, I would like to give over to you, Luis Juan Jotumanchil, and share with us your perspective.
Thank you very much, Ambassador, for the invitation again. And just let me share two ideas. Regarding the content of the international instrument, even if we need to give a roadmap to the INC, it's up to the INC to discuss the substances of the future treaty. It's important that this instrument is properly complementary to other multilateral environmental agreements, of course. But the substance will need to be discussed at the INC. And at this stage, the most important, previous to the UNEA 5.2, is to launch the process with an open and ambitious mandate. And regarding the process, you have asked in a previous question, the process will start after the UNEA 5.2 if it's approved with a strong mandate, and should convey the meetings. The UNEA will convey the meetings with a view to have an agreement by the next UNEA 0.6. So this is the main path in order to arrive to some agreements. Again, thank you very much for the invitation, and I'm very happy to be here in this panel. That means that governments, that means that enterprises, that means that civil society are working together in this in the idea of having this important agreement on plastic pollution. This is the idea of the new stakeholder diplomacy as well. So thank you very much again for the invitation, and we keep in contact, of course, to support our purposes. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Luis Juan. And with this, I hand over to you, Tina.
Thank you, Franz. And again, also from my side, it's been a pleasure to take part in this meeting. And let me just make 3 points at the end there. And first, the UNEA is going to be historic. It is going to be a key opportunity to prove the relevance and to show leadership. And as President Norway will do what we can to make it be exactly that historic moment and to get everybody together on arriving at the constructive way forward. So that will be my first point. And second, we feel quite optimistic. We feel that there's significant support from around the world. I think we've heard that here today, and I think we can expect the decision to launch negotiations, and that the hope will be that by UNEA-6 we have that global agreement, and that we will manage to get this off swiftly. And third point, from Norwegian side, just to assure you that we remain committed to the issue, and that we will working to maintain the high ambitions that we've heard here from today, not only from the panel but also from the people listening in. And we have a high ambition together to prevent plastic pollution and to get to better solutions. So we are very happy to continue to work with all of you on this issue. So let's cross our fingers and go to work, and looking forward to what comes next. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And let me just wrap up by really highlighting again that it was a pleasure to listen and stimulating to listen to each of you. And it was really a marvelous group that you, Diana, and the Jen were setting together. We started with a presentation from Norway, who can be said a little bit to be a mother or father or parent of that initiative by being the first bringing the issue of microplastic in the oceans to UNEA. And then we heard presentations by the ambassadors from Peru and from Japan, both having submitted the proposal for a legally binding instrument to this UNEA. And then finally, we also heard a clear and strong call, both from WWF and the environmental side, and from Nestle, representative from also several other business actors, that there is really a need for a legally binding instrument at the time is right for it. And then in the discussion, I think it became clear that there is a potential that the three different proposals perhaps could be combined. Each of it has some elements that could be brought together. It was also made clear, I think, from a discussion of the question that the new legally binding instrument should not compete, but build on the existing instruments, build on that and make full expertise of the existing instruments. And it was also made clear that it should allow for the engagement by private actors, by grassroots organizations, by institutions, and of course also by states. And there is a common, I think, a common call from all sides for bindingness, for a holistic approach, life cycle approach, circular economy approach. I think all indicate that we have to look at the whole picture, and that we will need a good mix of incentives, of bindingness, and of support. And Dina was indicating that there might be a preparatory meeting after UNEA to bring us forward to create the basis then for a speedy, efficient, and ambitious negotiation process. I think what is important, speed should not be at the cost of ambition. What we need at the end is a very ambitious legally binding instrument that makes different on the ground. And that makes me think a little bit of Harry Potter, where we needed 7 novels until Harry Potter and his friends has found all the Horcruxes that are needed in order to solve the problems and save the planet from the evil. So perhaps we will also need more than 5 rounds in order to bring together all the different elements that are needed to make that legally binding instrument really successful and to help us together to address the challenge of plastic pollution. Let me conclude by thanking wholeheartedly not only all of you, of those who have been speaking here and engaging in discussions, but also the broader audience, the really good questions that were tabled and that were brought to this very competent and distinguished round of speakers. And finally, last but not least, let me also thank once again you, Diana, and the whole Jen for organizing these dialogues on a global instrument on plastic pollutions. I think the speed plastic pollutions dialogues organized by Jen have been really tremendously interesting, stimulating, and helpful. And we look forward to other rounds of interesting Jen events, and of course to the negotiations in Nairobi. I'm looking forward to it, and I will certainly try to make sure to bring in all the elements that you have said there as negotiated on behalf of Switzerland. Thank you very much, and back over to you, Diana, if you have some information to share with us.
Yes, thank you very much, Franz. We really thank you warmly for capturing the key elements that have been brought by our panelists today, and for moderating excellently this event and for your continued support to the Geneva Environment Network. So yes, let's make history at the end of this month at the United Nations Environment Assembly. Just bring it to attention that we will have a session with the Norway presidency of the UN Environmental Assembly. So preparing for this important meeting and milestone. This session should take place mid-February, on the 14th of February. If the date changes, we will keep you posted. And also on another topic, this week in Geneva, there is the second Environmental Peacebuilding Conference involving a lot of actors from International Geneva on this thematic. And we will also be hosting a session on mobilizing International Geneva for environmental peacebuilding with your former boss, Franz, chairing that event. Philippe Roch will be our chair this Thursday. And with that, just bring to your attention also for those looking for more resources on plastic at the UN Environment Assembly and beyond, and on the preparations for the United Nations Environment Assembly, that on the Geneva Environment Network website, there are a lot of resources. Some links have been shared on the chat, and we will share further afterwards. So thank you all, and thank you also for the numerous people that have been involved on the preparation of these dialogues. And let's meet after we make history at UNEA for a third series of events on how we can move forward with the implementation of that agreement.